Mentality Podcast, a podcast about bringing incandescent lighting to everyday life from a Black man's point of view. Each week, we deliver the best hard-hitting analysis of current events, business, and personal development. Now here's your host, Daniel Lyle.
The podcast. I am Daniel Lyle, and today's topic is domestic violence, a generational pandemic. The reason why I call it the generational pandemic is because this is something that we've been dealing with since the beginning of time. A lot of people don't realize how long we've really been dealing with this, but this actually starts way before it actually started way back in creation, to be honest with you. It started way back during the time of creation. It started at the time when the serpent presented himself to another man's wife. The man, when I read Genesis chapter 3, verse 12, it says that the man answered the woman, you put here with me the fruit. She gave me the fruit and I ate it. Adam blamed his wife for his own downfall. And that was something that that's something that escalated over time. There's always been enmity between man and woman. But we're here for a purpose. We were here for a purpose, and that purpose is to help each other, to be there for each other. And we're going to go deeper into that. However, I do want to bring in my first guest of the day, and this person is a person who has been involved with who's had her own experiences with domestic violence. Please welcome at this time my first guest, Erin Forte.
Hi, can you see me?
No, ma'am, I cannot see you yet.
I don't know what happened.
All right, so she's having some technical difficulties. I'm about to bring her right back. Here she goes. I can see you now. Can't hear you now, though. There we go. You have to unmute your mic.
Okay. Hi, I'm Erin Forte, and when you asked me to do this, I was excited. I've been wanting to speak on this topic for a long time. I was married, and with kids, and the domestic did not start until he started doing drugs. I guess the main thing I want to reach out and tell everyone is don't stay. It's not worth it. You can get through it, and there's always someone that is out there willing to help. I almost lost my life. It saved me, literally, and just always pay attention. And you gotta just pay attention. It's not worth it. It's not worth losing your life over because it's very scary, and you can get through it. You can get through it.
Awesome. So what was it that helped you in your process of getting through it?
My kids. When I say literally, we tried counseling, we tried, rehab, jail, we went through all these processes, and it wasn't working. So it took a lot of prayer, and it took me to realize the look in my kids' eyes, and it was not worth it for me. When he would speak, they would jump. It wouldn't even have to be anything loud. If they thought we were going to argue, they would jump. Or just their whole demeanor. My daughter started peeing on herself. and she was fully potty trained. So it was a lot that I had to search for myself and say it's not worth it. And my support system was very, very strong when I finally opened up about it and came out, because I hid a lot of stuff. And once my support system found out about it, was very, very helpful. A lot of prayer. That was it. A lot of prayer. I've been in therapy still. I go to therapy on a regular basis. And I tell people, don't ever be scared of therapy. It's okay to express your feelings. It's okay to go see someone, because a lot of times you're not going to get through without it. It's a process, and they teach you how to deal with things. I see a Black therapist. She's wonderful. I've been seeing her for years. My kids see her, and she has helped tremendously with all of us. So with those three, with your support system, with therapy, and with prayer, I couldn't have done it. I couldn't have done it.
I understand that. So that's heavy. So that right there in itself is just understanding the power of prayer, because I feel like this, when you go in that, when you're in that kind of situation, it becomes a lot more difficult than people know, because you think that, why didn't you just call the police, or why didn't you just run? There's a mind control in those situations, and when that mind control is strong, it's hard to get out of that, and you won't be able to get out of that without the power of prayer. And we're going to elaborate more about the power of prayer in that particular instance, as well as, and this is something that you can actually apply throughout everything you do in life, especially when it comes to relationship situations. We're going to elaborate a little bit more on that, because I want to show you all, by the time this podcast is concluded, a scripture that really drives that particular thought process home, as far as that mental mindset and that mind. Mm-hmm. All right. So thank you for that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and bring you back backstage. I'm going to bring up our second guest. Okay. And have him talk about it, and then we're going to come back in for a conversation. We're going to have a real out conversation, because the thing is that the goal that we need to do is we need to find a way to change the narrative as to what's going on when it comes to domestic violence. There is really a underlying situation that we need to address. As and once we start addressing that situation, then we can begin to focus on changing the narrative in domestic violence in our relationships. So I'm going to go ahead and put you backstage. I'm going to bring back our second guest, and let's get into his story, and then we'll go right into it from there.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you for sharing your story, Aaron. See you soon. All right, so as I was saying, we have a second guest that we want to bring in. But before I bring him in and introduce you guys to our second guest, I do want to talk a little bit more about that situation. As I stated, how it started in the beginning of time, how it started in the beginning of creation when it came between Adam, Eve, and the serpent. That situation never necessarily changed. Never necessarily got better. It got worse, as a matter of fact, because it got so bad that it actually became a curse. And that's why this title of this particular podcast is Domestic Violence, a Generational Pandemic, because this pandemic is something that we've been dealing with throughout our generations. When you read the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 54, it states, "So that the man that is tender among you and very delicate, his eyes shall turn evil toward his brother, and toward the wife of his bosom, and toward the remnant of his children, which he shall leave." And when you read Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 56, it states that the tender and delicate woman among you, which would not venture to set the sole of her feet upon the ground for delicateness and tenderness, her eyes shall turn evil toward the husband of her bosom, and toward her son, and toward her daughter. That shows you right there that there is a issue that had came together, that this domestic violence had progressed over the years. When you look at these scriptures, and it says that the man will his eyes shall turn evil towards his brother and toward the wife of his bosom and toward the remnant of his children, which he shall leave. That's telling you right there that there is a deep hatred towards everybody, not just brother, but also the woman and his kids. There's a deep hatred there. And then when you look at the scripture where it says, so that the woman who is most tender and delicate among you, her eyes should turn evil towards her husband and towards her son and towards her daughter. There is a deep hatred there. So this is not going to be a one-part series. This is going to be a multiple-part series. But we're going to start with the husband and the wife because we have to change the narrative. With that being said, please allow me to introduce our second guest. His name is Brad. I'm not going to say his last name. I'll let him say his last name. Please welcome our second guest. Brad, how you doing, sir?
Hey, I'm doing all right. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, man. I knew you told me the last name, but I was like, I'm about to butcher this, and I don't want to do that.
It's all good, man. I've been dealing with that my whole life, man. So it's all good.
It's all good. Appreciate you, Brad, for coming on, man. So tell me, man, what sparked you? Talk about your organization real quick and tell us about the organization that you're a part of right now.
Sure. It's called Men Against Domestic Violence Action Coalition. So MADVAC, MADVAC. Again, Men Against Domestic Violence Action Coalition. And it was founded by two individuals named Bobby Brumfield and Charlie Vendetti, both former Omaha city cops, law enforcement, military, county prosecutor experience. Both of them kind of looked at each other and saw the numbers in the greater Omaha, area or whatever, and saw that, not only is this a generational, sickness, epidemic, chokehold that it has on our community, as a large, at large, but they said, here and now we need to be able to do something because, the more and more cases we see, the more violent they become, the more especially Black men and Black women and Black individuals get caught up in domestic violence issues, the greater it affects our communities, because per capita, we're not really all that represented here. So knowing that, they put their heads together, call it 3 years ago or so, and then just started recruiting other men to be intentional about reaching out to young men, medium-aged men, old men, whatever category you put yourself into. But we have the intent to get this information out to, we call it age 8 all the way up to 108. We don't care who it is and how it is. We want to get it to specifically men, but we do a lot of outreach to young women as well.
Awesome, sir. And what brought you to that organization? What's your story that brought you that made you want to say, I want to be a part of this story?
It's interesting that you teed it up as a generational thing, and for me, it is very generational. As you can see, my last name is Ekwer Ekwu. So my given name by my father is Chukwuemeka Ekwerekwu, and that's Nigerian from the Igbo tribe. And, one thing, I guess a few things that I know about the Igbo tribe and my Nigerian culture is that the relationship between men and women, father and mother, husband and wife is a lot different than what we would understand it to be in America. So, or the West altogether. I would say, I was introduced to domestic violence from as long as I can remember. My father was violent in the home. I can't say that my mother was never, because, I didn't always hear and see some of the fights that they had, but experiencing that as a young boy, growing up, many a times, I would hear and even witness some of the altercations between my mother and father. And then many a times I was, on the receiving end of some of that violence from my father as well. I think that was something that he learned culturally. I think that's something that he learned as being a strict father and a disciplinarian, and trying to keep me specifically and my brother and sister who were behind me, and even his wife, in line. He thought that that's what he was doing to be a strong individual, a strong man of his culture. And that's what he believed in. And you fast forward that too, I vowed to myself, I would never put myself in that situation. I'm never going to use these hands to harm another woman. And, in some of the relationship, in one particular relationship that I had maybe 10 years ago now, I was actually the victim of domestic violence. I was with, a young lady friend of mine decided that she was going to get physical with me, at a certain point in time. So I too have my lived experience, not only as a child looking at it from second and firsthand experiences there, but at a direct firsthand experience with a partner, they call it intimate partner violence, IPV. I have my direct experience with, having an intimate partner. And this young lady decided that's what she wanted to do to try to solve some of her problems. And, I am lucky to also live to see another day after that incident. So, it was a no brainer for me. I've worked in education and mentoring and athletics and manliest of man type spaces for my entire professional career. So knowing that Bobby and Charlie were trying to do something here, I had a great overlap with being able to be involved with some organizations locally that had oversight over some young men, especially young Black men. So it was a no-brainer. I also have education in my background. I have a couple degrees in education. So I put my thoughts and my talents toward building out a curriculum and some experiences that we have put together for programming through MadVac. And, I pitched it to them and they kind of looked at each other. They looked at me, they looked at each other, like they looked at me and they said, you know what, you're on board and we need to press play on this right now. And, like I said, that was about 2 years ago and we've reached somewhere between 15 and 20 different, subsets of people to include men, women, and everybody, all individuals that have requested our services.
Awesome. All right. So with that being said, man, that's a blessing. And can you give us real quick how we can get in touch with the MadVac? I want to make sure people know how they can get in touch with MadVac if they want to participate or if they need assistance or resources. How do we get in touch with MadVac?
Yes, sir, for sure. We're very active on the socials. We have I know Facebook for sure. I think there's an Insta. You're asking the wrong person for the socials. I know about the Facebook. I know about our website. We have a Gmail address, and that's I think it's just madvac@gmail.com. I have to get back to you on that, but I'll be able to put that up. But most easily, it's our website and our Facebook. Just a couple weeks ago, maybe call it last week, the week before, we're starting our regular column live stream, like Facebook Live podcast too. A number of resources are out there. We're pushing folks toward the WCA, Heartland Family Service, Lutheran Family Service. The county itself has a domestic violence group. Similar to all of our stories, if you're in immediate danger, please dial 911, get the authorities out there to you. But there are a number of resources out there to try to help you in your journey. And we know that it's not always easy to pick up and leave right now today. There are a lot of reasons why people stay in those type of relationships. But, that mentor, that guidance, that counselor will be able to talk you through some of the steps to safely get you and your kids and your loved ones and pets and belongings and all that kind of stuff out in a systematic way, which may take time. So, similar to Aaron, I want to encourage everyone. We see you, we hear you, even though we can't see you and we can't hear you. We're out here fighting for you.
Awesome. With that being said, please welcome Aaron back to the podcast and to the stream. Hey, Aaron, can you hear us? How you doing? All right. Good. Welcome back. So let's have a conversation because, as I stated before, we have to have this conversation. We have to state the narrative. And I want to tell you, the reason why this is such a topic for me today. This is such a heartfelt topic for me today is because I've been through all of the situations that you all mentioned, that you all mentioned. I've seen it happen as a child with my family, with my, through my, my entire family, not just my mom and pops, but also, seeing my uncles dealing with, going through their own versions of DV. But I've also been a victim of it as well. And I gotta say, I'm not something that I'm not proud of, but when I was young and dumb, I saw myself in a situation where I was, I got a charge for a domestic violence situation. It wasn't that I put my hands on a person, but it's still domestic violence is domestic violence because there's more than one particular way of being violent towards a person. And we're going to get into that because it's not just physical, it's also mental and emotional as well. So I got to say that, I'm not proud of who I used to be, but thank God that I have changed and I have seen it, because that's one thing that I told myself I would never use my hands to hurt somebody as well. That was one thing that I had made a decision a long time ago, because I was like, after seeing some of the things that I saw with my parents, I was like, there's no way in the world I could put myself through that position, that I want to put any woman through that position. So, nevertheless, things happen, and I had to deal with it the way that I had to deal with it. But I was like, as long as I didn't put my hands on it, I can walk away confidently, knowing that I'm a better person and I become a better through that process. But anyway, we do have to change the narrative. One of the things that I had noticed was that when I was going through the domestic violence website, here's a statistic for you. And I'm going to throw statistics out throughout the course of this particular podcast. But it says on average, 24 people per minute are victims of rape, physical violence, or stalking by an intimate partner in the United States. That's more than 12 million people, men and women, that are over the course of a year. On average, 24 people per minute are victims of rape, physical violence, or stalking by an intimate partner. What do y'all think about that when y'all hear that? When you hear a statistic like that,
it's scary.
It's scary,
sad.
Right? Since you said that, it's scary. That's perfect. Let's talk about intimate partner. You have brought that up earlier, Brad. Intimate partner. Let's talk about intimate partner. How do you classify an intimate partner?
Yeah, it's I'll react to that too. I think that's the scary fact. That's the real fact, and that's the fact that when I first heard that, I didn't believe it. Then I started to realize it. Then you almost go through all of these stages of denial, grief, anger. You want revenge. You want all of this. It's you go through all those stages, and you can't imagine that high of a frequency of a DV issue is happening all around you. And I'll never forget, man, the way that they got me all the way locked in and really excited with a hard urgency. A couple of summers ago, there was one weekend in the month of August, and I forgot which weekend it is, but they said, Charlie said, hey, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, guess how many DV calls that we had? Just actual calls that made it through in that one weekend. He told me something like 114, 124, something like that, calls that in a 3-day period in one weekend of the summer. And he'll tell us all the time that WCA sees something like 400 clients a month. And you think about the 30 days and the 31 days in every month, and you start to do your math, and you're like, wow, I mean, even at 300, that's 10 a day, 400, they're seeing 12, 15, 18 a day. And that's just an average. And those are just those that get in it. Those are the victims that find a way to get there or find a way to make that call. Your intimate partner is anybody that you could call as more than a friend. It could be your really, really close friend. Sometimes guys will say, oh, no, that's not my chick, but we've been best friends forever and ever and ever. And she knows me. We grew up around the block, and she knows I'm just playing, and our families know each other. We sit by each other in church and all that kind of stuff. That could be an intimate partner. That could be a relationship that's more than just an acquaintance, somebody you walking down, past the aisle at the grocery store. An intimate partner can be friend all the way up to, your wife your partner for, 80, 90 years, so it's that relationship that is more than just an acquaintance basis, more than just a like, hey, how you doing basis. It's somebody that you would know in that way.
Right. Anything you want to add to that, Aaron?
That's a lot of that's heavy, especially when you said the people that don't report it. That's the only people that are actually reaching out. That is heavy. Because
Right.
I didn't reach out to anybody like that. I eventually called the police, but that's heavy. That's heavy.
Yeah, it really is. It really is, because when you think about it, there's a lot of people, it just made me think. September is also known as National Suicide Month, and there's a lot of victims that never make it out of their situations of domestic violence, and because they decide to go ahead and end their life, which leads me to the next statistic. It states right here, it says nearly half of all women and men in the United States have experienced psychological aggression by an intimate partner in their lifetime. So when you actually look at that, nearly half of all women and men, that is 48.4% for women and 48.8% for men, respectively, have experienced psychological aggression. Psychological aggression, that's talking about mental. That is mental aggression. Taking time out to belittle your partner and your loved one. That's something, that's a form of abuse as well. And a lot of people don't. I think this is one of the reasons why a lot of men don't step up. But and I'm going to ask about that in a moment here. But I think that may be another reason why a lot of men don't step up, because when they are thinking in terms of domestic violence and being victimized, they're not thinking in terms of somebody. They're not thinking in terms of they're thinking in terms of their pride. Their pride is on the line. They're like, wow, I was victimized. They don't want to own up to the fact that they were victimized for any reason. So, but like I said, while we on that subject, Brad, do you care to expound on why men don't step up to claim that?
Yeah, most often we see that, whether it's culture, whether it's media, whether it's the locker room, all these environments are teaching men to be a certain type of way. A lot of times it's the music or the magazine. People don't read magazines anymore. All the social, all the movies, all of that stuff that we see. I need to be a certain type of man. And we talk about this a lot, about being exhibiting healthy masculinity versus toxic masculinity. So having a better idea of what a healthy, quote unquote, man, or exhibiting healthy masculinity versus some of these toxic habits that you're like, oh man, I didn't even know I was doing that. I didn't even know that was going on. And to tie in what you were saying earlier, Daniel, about the idea of having to have power and control. We talk about this power and control wheel and all of the individual behaviors and techniques that somebody would use to control somebody. I don't never have to put a finger on you, but I can still control you with my mind, with your heart, finances, technology, with the way you come and go. Your assets are now my assets. You don't go until I say you go. Some people try to control people by sex or sexual relations. And to your question, why is it that men have a harder time? It's because they have to be hard out here. They have to be big and bad and tough, and they can't cry and they can't show emotion. And a lot of times we don't know how to solve any kind of conflict or argument that we might have. And we think that overpowering or becoming aggressive in the type of way is going to immediately shut down the situation and shut down the conversation with any partner. I will add that, many men and those who identify as men are also victims. As we've shared here, as many of the those that do reach out and those that don't reach out, they're also victims and trying to find ways to reach out and say, I don't want to be controlled or abused in any of these ways either. But, specifically men, we at NAVAC, and I shot the website over in the comments. We want to intentionally say that we are intentionally here to talk to men about being leaders in this conversation. We have to be leaders in a way that says enough is enough. We're going to start making it cool to be able to show our emotions. We're going to make it cool and acceptable to hold each other accountable and to say that violence is not the way, control is not the way. being devious in a way that undermines or devalues or belittles your partner is not the way. How can we find ways to constructively speak on ways to get past our conflicts? We need to be positive in our ways instead of destructive and negative and tearing people down.
Right.
I have you talking about talking and belittling someone. After I left that relationship, I was horrible. I was toxic myself because I didn't know how to project anything when my next relationship, and so I had to work through that in therapy because I was not good. I was a horrible, and I had to apologize once I realized it wasn't right. And like you said, he didn't say anything. It was something that I noticed myself working through my stuff through therapy is what I realized. I've got to change something. He would have never said anything. And I appreciate you guys for realizing that men need to express their emotions. That is a major thing. And I have 2 boys, 16 and 2. That is something I'm trying to teach them because my fiance doesn't do it. And I'm trying to get him to open up. And me admitting to him that I was wrong was hard for me to do. But to him, he didn't, it wasn't anything.
Right.
So that is,
here. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was done.
Okay. So here's a scripture that I wanted to share with you earlier. It says in Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 5, I'm going to scroll it real quick across. But Jeremiah 17, verse 5, it says, thus said the Lord, cursed be the man that trusteth in man and maketh flesh his arm, and whose heart departs from God. What that means is we tend to put our trust in each other, and our significant other becomes our gods in so many ways. And when we do that, our hearts depart from the God, the actual God, because all of our power and all of our heart and all of our strength is drawn from that person. So that person, once that person has that kind of power over you, that person at that moment in time becomes, not only he becomes your God, but he also becomes your source of strength. So now he has mind control, or she has mind control. And when they're having that kind of mind control over you, then they can do the things that they feel like they can do to you. And that's where a lot of the domestic violence situations become domestic violence situations. Whether it's physical, whether it's emotional, whether it's mental, it becomes what it is because of that fact, because that power has now been transferred from your God to that person, and that person is now your God. So I wanted to connect that dot because, like I said before, when I said at the beginning of this podcast, is that this is a generational pandemic. We're talking, and the reason why I call it a generational pandemic is because the word pandemic is what we are currently relating everything to. When we're talking about COVID-19, we're relating that to being a pandemic. So this is a pandemic that is not being addressed in a way that it should be addressed. So we have to change the narrative as to what's being addressed. And this ain't the only thing that has to be addressed. I feel like we just have to start here because it starts with us, the man and the woman, the mother and the father, the husband and wife. And once we can start taking care of us and start getting us back on track, then we can start trickling down through our children and through our neighbors and through everybody else. So this can actually, because this is the only way that we're going to be able to cure our communities, from everything that we're dealing with. There's a lot of violence in our communities right now. And this is the best way for us to start curing our communities. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yep. So I wanted to point out this as a statistic as well, because a lot of people want to know exactly what constitutes domestic violence. So when you read that scroll, it says that repeatedly receiving unwanted telephone calls, voice or text messages was the most commonly experienced stalking tactic for both male and female victims of stalking. So stalking is also a form of domestic violence, believe it or not. That's 78% for women and 75.9% for men. So stalking is considered domestic violence, and I've been a victim of that. People, had a IPV that was, repeatedly contacting me. I've changed my number several times, trying to avoid this contact, and that person continued to find my number and continue to aggressively contact me. And to this very day, it hasn't even stopped, believe it or not. So, that's something that, that we have to address as a form of domestic violence. Another thing is nearly half, I think I already mentioned this, but I want to mention it again, nearly half of all men and women experience psychological aggression. Putting your significant other down. That is a definite form of domestic violence. When you're talking bad about you a broke son of a, or you weak, or you a bitch. All of these things, when you're putting these people down, and you're supposed to be in a relationship to uplift the person, that's going to have an effect. Understand, what people need to understand is this, if I'm supposed to be the person loving you and protecting you, and I'm not doing my job to protect you, or if I'm not protecting you from me, then I'm not doing my job of protecting you. Because I have to protect you from everybody. So, if I'm protecting from everybody, that includes myself. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people miss the mark when they say everybody, because if you're not included in that everybody, then it's not everybody you protect yourself from.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick, and a lot of times, we get into classes and we talk to the young boys, and we'll give them a scenario like that, and they, for the most part, we say, what, if you were to see a relationship like this, a scenario like this, would you intervene? And most, for the most part, they're like, yeah, if they were doing that, and if I find out one of my homeboys was doing this and blah blah blah, I'd be doing that. I'd intervene. I'd step in and say, and try to check them, try to hold them accountable. What happens is sometimes we will be in classes and we'll say that scenario, and some of the boys, you can kind of see them staring off because they're recalling some of these memories of maybe what they saw last night, or what they saw 10 years ago, or what they saw when they were 2 or 4 or 10 or 14 or whatever. And they're saying, well, that's just regular, or what did she do to piss him off, or what did he do to piss her off, or whatever, and it's normalized for them. So they don't understand that when they get into their relationship, that it's not normal. It can't be normal. So, bringing to life, like, not only is the scenario a scenario of a negative type of relationship, you have to point out which parts of that is negative. So you can't roll by her job. You can't roll by her place of worship, or her place, where she'll be, her mama's house or sister's house, or where you can't do that. Well, my mama did that. My uncle did that. My dad did that. Whomever it is, you have to point that out and say, again, on our list, we usually have 2 lists on our list of healthy traits and healthy masculinity versus the toxic ones and those that cause destruction and all that kind of stuff. Which side does that land on? So some people, we use the term that's used a lot in education is unlearning. It's not relearn. I have to unlearn some of the things that I've learned through my own experiences. I have stimuli and literal senses that are stored in my brain. I have imagery that's stored in my brain, and sights and sounds and smells and tastes and feels, and the ways that I stored all of these memories in my brain are all seared in here. And then when I get to those situations, when I'm 14 and 24 and 34 and 84, I'm going to act the same exact, because that's what I know. Mm-hmm. And that's what I saw. So when we get to those points of, hey man, don't stalk. Hey man, don't blow her phone up. Don't make her change her number. Don't roll by her job. All this stuff that I was just saying. We have to put that into a category that says, again, you have to unlearn that as a way to deal with your conflict or deal with your current situation. We have to learn better, more positive, more constructive ways to be able to handle that situation. You know, in your case, if you don't want that, you know, you change your number multiple times. By then, you would think that, you know, that person got the hint. So again, that would be somebody to either be in place to check that person, or somebody in place to say, hey, I need to reach out for a resource to try to help this way or that way. Hopefully, what we're doing is setting down a community of practice, is what we call it. You know, this brotherhood about how men can make other men and boys can grow into healthier men, and that be the majority. That's going to be the cool thing to do. After a while, you know, and again, it's easy to say, like, what if this was happening to your mom? What would you do? If somebody did this to your grandma, what would you do? Oh man, I'm riding out, you know, bang, bang, and, you know, all that kind of stuff that they want to do nowadays. I'm riding out, you know, me and the fellas is getting out. And then you say, all right, so do you think that, you know, and then what happens if somebody did this to your daughter? And then even more of them jump up. Nah, man, hell no, ain't nobody going to do that to me and mine. And then you check them and you be like, man, but your girl, you know, or whomever it is you're doing that, what if that's my sister? Or what if, you know, that's somebody's daughter too? And you check them and it's oh man, well, and you're like, yeah. So next time you try to put your hands on somebody, imagine that it's my blood sister. And you know, the immediate time you try to stalk her, put your hands on her, try to talk to her crazy, try to do something with her sexually or not, you know, whatever it is, just know that me, or her real brother, or her real father, or her real partners, or whoever it is going to come for you with the same kind of energy that you're feeling right now about somebody doing that to your sister, your mom, your baby girl, on and on. So we're putting it into context to try to get them to think now, so that when they get to those situations later, it's easy. It's a similar concept in athletics about watching film. You know, you watch film, you do what you need to do ahead of time in the week of practice, in your practice days. So when you get to the game, you have seen this before. You know how to react. You know how to adjust. It's the same concept here.
Man, that's a phenomenal way of putting that. It's a phenomenal way of putting that. And I had put a scroll up saying that 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men aged 18 and older, we'll put it back up here so you can see it, in the United States have been victims of severe physical violence by an intimate partner in their lifetime. That number in that itself is alarming. You know, we talked about how scary that really is. That's a very alarming situation. You know,
hey, I don't mean to interrupt. I don't mean, but repeat the stat repeat it so it lands. Repeat those numbers, man.
1 in 4 women, 24.3% of all women in the United States, and 1 in 7 men, 13.8% of all men ages 18 and up in the United States have been victims of severe physical violence by an intimate partner in their lifetime. That number is more scary than you could ever imagine.
Could an intimate partner be considered a parent?
And in terms of domestic violence,
no,
it should not be considered. There's not to be a parent, because, you know, the reason why I say it should not be, because there are relationships that happen that are ancestral, and, you know, that's not supposed to happen in the first place. But, you know, once that level of intimacy is crossed, you know, that happens. You know, but it technically should not be that. It should not be between parent and child. You know?
I'm not going to speak on that.
I can't rule out that, though, since we're talking about it. We can't rule out the fact that there's people that are have incestual relationships, so we couldn't rule that out.
The reason why I wanted you to repeat that, because I want you to put it into context. You know, back when we were able to go to church, back when, I mean, you can still go to the store now. Imagine yourself at a Friday night football game, a Saturday, Sunday football game, a gathering at the mall, in rush hour traffic. Think about how many people are in there at one point in time. Say there's 100 people. 1 out of every 4 of the women, 1 out of every 7 of the men and then you're putting a number to that. I mean, you're on rush hour traffic. Count 4 more cars up. That person is driving home to a partner that is abusive to them. Count 4 more cars up. That person also is driving home to a partner that is abusive. Count 7 more cars up. That person is also driving home in your church, in the store, in the club, in wherever it is that you're gathering. Think about how, and I'll make the point again. Those are only the ones that are reported.
Right. Because remember, there's ways
that exercise to yourself. You count. You like, man, I'm running out of fingers counting all of this, knowing that these are the heartbreaking, angering stats. Those are the ones that are reported. What do you do? And then there's others that we haven't reached yet. There are others who haven't, come out publicly and said, I need help to add one way or another to those stats. That's the reality. I mean, you go downtown and watch everybody walking on the street. I mean, there's a good probability that somebody there is either walking with them, or they're headed home to them, or they just got away from them, or they're thinking about how to try to get away from their partner, their abusive partner.
Absolutely, and that's an alarming stat as well. So now the question is, as I stated before, we have to change the narrative. But we could not change the narrative by bringing attention to it. So how do we begin, now that we got attention to these facts, how do we begin to change the narrative?
I would start with mental health. From the woman's side, I would say they need not just, I'm not going to say, I don't want to use the word weak. I want to say have more self-esteem, have more care about themselves more. From the man's side, I'm going to say you have to be open to get help. Like in my situation, the mental health was generational on his side, and no one ever got help. And then you add the addiction side to it. No one ever got help. And it just kept going and going and going. And that's all he knew. And so that's something that needs to be addressed, is the mental health, so they can at least acknowledge it and get the help to say something is not right here. Whether it's the anger issues, whether it's they were getting abused in the past, whatever it is, it needs to be addressed. I never saw it growing up. I never saw anything like that. And so for me to stay was very odd for my family, but I wanted it to work. I wanted my marriage to work. But it got to a point, it was too much. We tried therapy, we tried this, we tried that, and it just wasn't going to work. So I think the mental health is a major part that needs to be addressed both ways.
I agree. You had said something that we kind of overlooked. We didn't overlook it, but we didn't really expound on it that much. When you look at some of the causes of domestic violence, drugs, alcohol, depression, and when you think about those things, drugs, alcohol, depression, drugs and alcohol to me are like amplifiers to depression, to stimulate depression. If you're depressed, a lot of times you turn to drugs and alcohol to stimulate yourself, to stimulate your mind. Like Smokey said, stimulate your mind, Craig. Stimulate your mind. So I think, it's serious though. Like they use drugs and alcohol as a way to stimulate themselves to have the confidence that they're lacking because they're depressed. So that's something that, like you said, mental health has to be dealt with. I was listening to a song recently, and what caught my attention about the song was he stated that in school he learned about science and in math and social studies and history, but he never learned how to deal with his anxiety. You know, and I was like, wow, like that is something that we really never learned growing up, dealing with the anxiety, dealing with our social emotional issues. You know, and that's something that really brings depression to another level, man. Because when we don't know how to deal with that and cope with that, how do we get it? We're not getting it in churches, even though that's something that we should be getting in churches. Yep. We're not getting it at home, even though that's something that we should be getting at home. So how do we deal with those types of issues, anxiety, depression, self-esteem, self-reflection? How do we deal with those type of issues and we're not being educated on it? Want to touch that, Brad? Like awesome.
Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. Situations like this. You want to touch on that, Brad?
Yeah, for sure. That's what I was going to add to that is really a focus around bringing these real issues to their real lives, making it real to them. I can imagine that stat, and that's why I had you repeat it, because I can read a stat and it's just a stat. Like it's not real to me. That happens somewhere else. That's in Texas. That's in Atlanta. Don't worry about that. It's here. It's on our streets. It's in our places that we go to. And so is mental health. So is anxiety. So is conflict resolution. So is my short temper. So is, all the gang violence, all of this. Well, what we're really focused on right now is being able to say, yes, you're stressed. Yes, it's messed up right now. Yes, you have this anger and you have all these bottled up emotions. Here are some constructive ways to get rid of destructive stimulus. You want to hit something, you want to hit somebody, you want to take this anger out. Maybe we need to get you into boxing. Maybe we need to get you into working out, something like that. Like how can we rewire your mind to think and feel powerful and productive in maneuvering through some of those emotions? And again, there's a group out there that's really working on tearing down some of these norms. And I'm gonna throw the website in here right now in the comments. They put out a film. This group put out a film called The Mask You Live In. And the whole premise behind that is I show up and I have this mask on, and on the outside, I want you to think that I'm a ladies' man and I'm cool and I got the tightest J's on and I got a little change in my pocket and I'm that guy, right? I got the beats and all that. But behind that mask, they do an exercise. They say, all right, but what's behind that mask? Are you funny all the time? Are you really this person that you portray to everybody else? And a lot of it was the same stuff we're talking about. Sadness. I miss my dad. I got anger. I'm scared of my next step. I want the girls to like me, but I don't know how. That kind of stuff. And when we really start to talk to some of that stuff, when we really start to think about how we can empower some of those things and then create a space for them to share that in. It has to be a safe space for men to still be healthy and cool and dope and those dudes and say, you know what, I am dealing with this. I do have these doubts sometimes. I do go through these roller coasters sometimes. That's the whole premise behind that project. That's what we try to set up too. There's a famous Kanye line that says, you can still be a man. You can still love your man and be manly, dog. And that's true, man. We need to start leading with love. And I'm not talking about anybody's sexual preference, but having an attitude of embracing people with love when they're, high, medium, and low, when they're good, bad, and ugly. That's the type of attitude. That's the way we need to start attacking. That's the mental health or anxiety or conflict resolution or whatever kind of depression, whatever it is that we're facing out here. That's been the recipe for a long, long time. And that will only lead to healthier habits afterwards.
Man, well stated. And what you said about man and being a man and loving your man, I want to go back to that scripture I read earlier today when I was reading Deuteronomy 28:54. It says, so that the man that is tender among you and very delicate. I want to stop right there before I go to the rest of that scripture. It says, so that the man that is tender among you and very delicate, which means We used to have a point, there used to be a point in time in our lives that we actually cared about our brother. We cared about our brothers, and that day has changed. And this is why, going back to the title of this presentation, A Generational Pandemic, that day is over. That day that we care about our brothers, we stopped doing that. And it says, his eyes shall turn evil towards his brother. His eyes shall turn evil towards his brother. That's telling us right now that day is over, that we stop loving our brothers. And then it says, then to take it a little bit home, he said, and toward the wife of his bosom. Our men stop loving their wives. They stop taking care of their wives. And toward the remnant of his children, which he shall leave. He stops caring about his children. So who are we loving if we stop caring about each other? If we stop caring about our brother, if we stop caring about our wives, and we stop caring about our children, who are we loving then? We can't be loving anybody. People say you love yourself, but if you're loving yourself, then how is it that you love yourself but you don't care nothing about your children?
And that's what we want to encourage. This is a healthy way to show love and receive love. Even if you don't get it at the crib, even if your parents didn't show you a great model, let's do it ourselves. Your teachers, your coaches, your mentors. This is a positive way to be able to interact with one another, and especially when you get into intimate partners. These are the healthy and safe boundaries that you got to put up on both sides. That's Absolutely. The stuff that we're learning. And then to your point, this is how we're leading with love. I got to lead with a positive and constructive way, and then receive it in a positive and constructive way.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. One of the things that you'll probably hear on my next podcast, I'm actually going to have another one going out this Saturday. It's called Spiritual Fitness. I'm going to talk about one of the things that I realized when it comes to love. When you read the book of Mark, the 12th chapter, the 29th verse through the 31st verse, it talks about the two greatest commandments being that you love God with all of your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and that you love your neighbor as yourself. Now, I'm not going to go into it right now, but what I want you to understand is that love is a reverse engineering project. When you think about a house, you don't see everything that goes into the buildup of that house, but you do know that it has to start first in your mind. You have to be able to conceive it first before you can actually build it. Otherwise, when you start putting things together without any kind of conception in your mind, it's not going to come out the right way, right? So that means there's going to be a blueprint, and the blueprint goes as follows. Instead of you loving yourself, instead of you loving God first, because God said, how can you love my brother, how can you love me whom you have not seen, but hate your brother who you see daily? You have to love your neighbor first, right? But that's before you can get to loving God. Before you can get to love your neighbor, it says, there's another verse that says, how can you pull the splinter out of your brother's eye when there's a log in yours? You got to remove the log out of your eye first before you can actually remove the splinter out of your brother's. Think about it in terms of taking a flight. When the flight attendant is giving you the rules on how to protect yourself in the event of a crash, she always tells you to put the oxygen mask on yourself first, right? Then you can put it on your neighbor. So you have to be able to love yourself first in order for you to love anybody else, in order for you to love your neighbor, in order for you to love God. So you have to be able to put yourself in love. You have to become in love with yourself. When you're able to do that, you are able to practice on your brothers. And then you can put the whole thing into motion with everybody else. So I'm going to talk more about that on my Spiritual Fitness podcast. But I wanted to expound that when we start getting into this point right here where it says the brother who was once tender and delicate, same thing with the women who was tender and delicate among you. There was a point in time where the scripture says right here that there was a point in time when we would not allow our women to put the sole of her feet on the ground because she was so tender and so delicate. I'm not meaning that physically, but we cared about her that much. Remember, there's old movies that actually showed men actually laying down their coats on puddles so that the women can step over it. That's showing that we care about our women. That's showing that we loved our women. We have to get back to loving ourselves. We have to get back to loving our families. We have to get back to loving each other. And that's the only way that we can address this pandemic and really deal with this pandemic that is known as domestic violence. All right, with that being said, I thank you both for taking the time out to speak with me about this pandemic. Like I said, this is part one of this situation, because we have to address these issues, these generational pandemics. We're going to address them. We're going to attack them, each and every one of them, because this is the only way that we're going to really get back to the love and the care that we have for each other. So I want to take time out to thank you. Any last words from you, Aaron? Let's start with you first.
I would say once you get out, you need to make sure you speak out so that others can get the help that they need. And for me personally, I'm very open with my kids because I don't want my son to follow the footsteps of what he has seen. And he says he doesn't want to. You know, I put him in therapy. He was very angry, but I can't play still, like, you know, wrestle or anything like that. And I want him to understand he needs to see what a healthy relationship is like. So you have to communicate with your kids. You have to show them, if you've been in this situation, show them what healthy is. You have to be the one to break that cycle and to change. If you've been in it, you have to be the one to change it.
Awesome. And if anybody wants to know more or wants more courage, encouragement in getting out of these situations, will they be okay with reaching out to you?
They can
All right.
always
So
call.
there you have it. All right. So do that. Reach out to her. Find her on Facebook, Erin Forte. Erin Forte. Find her on Facebook. Reach out, DM her, and she will definitely help you with the words of wisdom and encouragement throughout that process. Mm-hmm. All right. And what about you, Brad? Any last words from you, sir?
Yeah, first and foremost, I've appreciated and am humbled by the time that we've spent together. Thank you for the invitation to be a part of this conversation. I also want to thank you both for sharing your personal testimonies. I know that it takes a long journey to be able to do that. I'll just exclamation point the fact that we talked about there are some ugly, alarming, very angering stats out here. It is a real problem right next door, right down the street in our communities. This is not something that happens somewhere else. And I'll finish by saying, yes, for sure, we as men need to take an active role, if not the leadership role, in making sure that our masculinity is in check. And then this idea of men for men is exactly where we need to be. We need to have men that are pointed in the healthy and constructive way, go out and intentionally speak with and mentor and guide and counsel younger men in efforts to point in the same direction. Because, in a lot of ways we are who we see, and in a lot of ways we're going to continue on in ways and in habits that produce healthy outcomes. So we need to find more and more opportunities to produce those outcomes, but they're not just going to come to us. So I challenge any male that's in any kind of advisory role to be able to go out there and do that. And kudos to all the single moms and mothers, including mine, that took a stand and who are pushing for this too.
Awesome. And last words from me, like I said, this is something that I'm really passionate about. Just wanted to take that stand. This is the Mentality Podcast. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at DLive Fitness. I'm all about the healthier lifestyle. So this is one of the things that we needed to address as far as becoming a healthier lifestyle. One thing I did not mention in this entire podcast is that there is a statistic that is out there that I wanted to share with you all, about domestic violence and how it relates to actual health. There's a lot of people out there that actually have heart diseases and other kind of diseases because they're stressed out because they don't know how to get out of the situation they're in. So this is a health issue, not just a mental health issue, but this is a physical health issue as well. So we have to really attack this head on and break this generational pandemic and this generational curse. But again, this is the Mentality Podcast. I thank you again, Brad. I thank you again, Aaron, for coming on to the show. This
Thanks
is
for having me.
one of the shows that's going to be one of the most important things that we'll ever touch. And I, once again, just want to say thank you, and I look forward to seeing you all again soon. The Mentality Podcast. We're out.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Mentality Podcast. Make sure to visit our website, DLiveFitness.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or via RSS, so you will never miss a show. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes or Spotify. If you simply tell a friend about the show, that will help us out too. If you like this show, you might want to check out our course, Uplift, the fitness program. D-Live Fitness is available for private coaching. We specialize in personal training, nutrition coaching, and spiritual consulting. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our media outlets. Links are in the description. Until next time, be strong and courageous.